Let's bring in our first guest, former federal prosecutor. You see him on the show often, our good friend, Larry Klayman. Larry's also the founder of Freedom Watch. Larry, great to see you. Also with us is Jeffrey Lord, columnist for the American Spectator and former associate political director in the Reagan White House. Jeff actually assisted in the judicial nominating processes of 5 Supreme Court justice nominees, including Robert Bork, who was famously borked out of his nomination by Senate Democrats. Jeff, Larry, great to see you both. Jeff, I'm going to start with you because you have so much experience with this process. Is this the worst you've ever seen, this obstructionism by Democrats? Grassley made it 6 seconds before Kamala Harris and her chorus of partisans jumped all over him.
I have to say, since the Bork episode, this process has gone downhill. It started with Supreme Court justices, then filtered down to appeals court nominees and district court nominees on occasion. And yeah, this is bad. This is a circus. And I have to admit, in 1987, on the Bork nomination, the Reagan White House was blindsided. Our chief of staff was Howard Baker, a former senator and Senate Majority Leader, very collegial, et cetera. He was expecting that kind of treatment from his former colleagues for Judge Bork. Instead, they went on a rampage. Robert Bork's America, that memorable, terrible speech given by Senator Kennedy. And then, interestingly, a television commercial with Gregory Peck doing the voiceover that Robert Bork was just such a terrible guy. I even suggested at that point that we do a counter commercial with Charlton Heston. But I was overruled. But my point is, this process has now gone downhill from there, and there's a formula to it. What you can't see, what the viewers can't see, are all the outside special interest groups that have this incestuous relationship with the Democratic.
But you know, Jeff, not to interrupt you, but Dianne Feinstein introduced a bunch of them, including Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton is one of the dignitaries in the audience for the Dems. But like you say, she introduced a host of groups. It was LGBT coalitions, inner city coalitions, coalitions for bail reform. I mean, it was a who's who of far left groups in the audience invited by the Democrats.
And I assure you, in terms of the relationship with their staffs, this produces 2 things: a steady flow of going back and forth for information. And I've suggested on Twitter, if Democrats this morning, Senator Blumenthal, were calling for sunlight and transparency to release all the communications between the Democratic senators and their staffs and these interest groups. But that's one way they do it. And then the other is what you have seen is that they literally put people in these committee hearing rooms to protest one by one by one.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a whole batch of them. And then over time, they'll stand up one at a time and do this. They'll get removed, and then the next one goes, and the next one, and the next one. They've got this down to a science, and it's pretty despicable.
Yeah, you know, Chuck Grassley was being a bit too tolerant for my taste of those protesters. So Orrin Hatch said something when he was speaking. He said we should have this loudmouth removed. He then went on to say, I hope she's not a law student. But what was most interesting to me is when Pat Leahy, a far leftist, got his time to speak. He actually agreed with Orrin Hatch. He said he wouldn't speak during the protest. He didn't care that they were on his side of the aisle, what side of the aisle they were on. So I got to give Pat Leahy credit. I disagreed with every other word he said. But in aligning with Orrin Hatch on that, I got to give credit where it's due. So, Larry, will any of this matter? Is this just a dog and pony show by the Dems? Doesn't Kavanaugh get confirmed no matter what?
It's a dog and pony show by both parties, frankly. Look, the Democrats have said they're not going to vote for Kavanaugh. So what do they care about documents? That's a lot of nonsense. They're just there to disrupt. And I got to tell you, I got to use the president's terminology here with regard to the people in the gallery, including Sharpton. They're animals. That's what they are. We are in a war between left and right. One side's going to win, the other's going to lose. In the words of Winston Churchill, we want total victory. Now, I'm not really a fan of Kavanaugh because he believes in unconstitutional mass surveillance of the American people. He thinks that's fine. But there deserves to be a real hearing, as Jeffrey said, and some sincerity from people in the Senate. And you've got people like Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, and others, frankly, who, in my view, shouldn't even be senators. They're just a bunch of vigilante hacks that are up there trying to disrupt and to it's all about President Trump. They're trying to get to him. That's what it is.
You know what I saw this to me with the Democrats anyway, I'm not even being tongue-in-cheek or funny. This was a taxpayer-funded infomercial for their 2020 presidential hopes. This was an ad
but
for
just
their
going
presidential
against the
primary.
president didn't work in 2016.
They've got nothing else, Miranda.
They don't.
I don't think they have anything else.
So you mentioned all these disruptions, Larry. The bottom line is, what's going to happen? I mean, is it going to amount to anything? Are they going to be successful at doing this? I mean, most of the Republicans seem to be on board with this idea. You have Collins and Murkowski, who both voted to confirm him back in 2006.
Right. Joe Manchin's probably going to cross over vote.
Right.
Heitkamp, Donnelly from Indiana.
So what are the odds right now? Are they stacked against the Dems?
Yeah, I think it's 0. And you've got Senator McCain, who just passed away, so you're going to have a senator in Arizona to add to that list. There'll be 51 Republicans plus the vice president if he needs to break a tie. This is a lock. People like Brett Kavanaugh. He's very amiable. He's got a nice demeanor, that kind of thing. It's going to be very hard for them to take him apart during these hearings.
But you probably would if you were there. So you said you don't like his stance when it comes to surveillance. Can you explain to the audience what you mean by that? And if you were there serving as one of these senators, what question would you ask him?
I would never have nominated in the first place. The president could have nominated others. Now, I had a personal experience with him in running Freedom Watch. We got 2 preliminary injunctions against Obama's intelligence agencies for mass surveillance on the American people, notwithstanding Trump, notwithstanding judges, notwithstanding people like yours truly. We can't live under that sword of Damocles. That's a police state. That's Orwellian. That's what the judge called it. And when the law changed, because we provoked a change in the law to the USA Freedom Act, which was supposed to alleviate this mass surveillance violation of the Fourth Amendment, which it didn't. The intelligence agencies continued on, as we know, with Trump and everyone. Well, the government went back, the Justice Department under Obama, and said, well, now the issue is moot. We have the USA Freedom Act that alleviates everything. So the case was dismissed on the grounds that it was now moot. Kavanaugh wrote an opinion which he didn't have to write. Even the leftist judges on the appellate court didn't write anything. They just said it's moot. He wrote an opinion which said this mass surveillance was fine, that there was an exception during this particular period of need, so to speak. And I don't know how you can have a judge who doesn't have respect for the Fourth Amendment and the rights of privacy. I'm not talking about bogus rights of privacy in other areas that the court has created, but this is a fundamental right in our Constitution, Fourth Amendment right.
Right.
I wish the president had chosen somebody else.
So, Larry, you just real quickly, because I do want Jeffrey to have the last word here before we go to break, but real quickly, you would vote no. You would not confirm him.
If I was there, I wouldn't confirm him on the merits, not what the Democrats are doing. They just don't like him generally. But yeah, I would vote no.
All right, Jeff, real quick, because we only have about 30 seconds left. The Democrats are crying because they say they didn't get enough documentation from the Bush White House during Kavanaugh's time as staff secretary. But the Republicans and many presidential historians, people who worked in the White House like you, say staff secretary is just a traffic cop. They direct relevant info to the president's desk without keeping their thumb on the scale of bias. So are those documents relevant? Is that an accurate assessment? Are those staff secretary documents relevant or not? 20 seconds, Jeff.
No, they're not relevant, and you wonder what they need them for since they've already all announced that they're going to oppose him anyway. So this is just politics. They want to find something in there to use against him, and they're not going to be able to do it, and they're angry.
All righty. Larry Klayman, Jeff Lord, thanks very much, gentlemen, for joining us.
You're welcome, guys and gals.
Yep.